First order on the agenda, minutes of the last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes for March 7th, 2024?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just made that correction, 2025.
25, oh, sorry, thank you.
You're
So noted. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Aaron?
All right, first item on the agenda, we have the Alexander, is it Haroon? Request, could the applicant step forward? Please state your first and last name, and then I'll give a brief overview of the request.
It's Alexander Harhun.
All right, so this request, it is located at 7934 Jason Avenue Northeast in Monticello Township. The property is about 6 acres or so, 6.02. It's zoned general agriculture. The request, it is to allow for a 10-foot by 12-foot unpermitted front porch, a 14-foot by 18-foot unpermitted four-season area, and then a 14 by 25 unpermitted deck. And then we do have a 28-foot by 44.5-foot proposed addition to the home. The home would be 105 feet from the center line of the county road. The reason a variance is required is because that existing home is located within that 130-foot setback from the center line of a county road. The township, they said they approve of the request. The county highway department, they said they have no issues with this. Reduced setback to County State Aid Highway 18 for the home addition. They just said they wouldn't want it any closer or any new structures placed closer to the roadway than the nearest portion of the existing home, which is, they said, approximately 100 feet from the center line, so that's kind of where their line was, that they didn't want to see anything closer. While no neighbors officially submitted any comment to me, I did receive 2 phone calls from neighbors asking exactly what was going on. And then they did say that the applicant has done a really good job with the property. They said it's much better shape than it used to be. So that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything he wishes to add to what was said?
Not really. I mean, he explained everything pretty good.
Okay.
Originally, when I did the other additions that was spoke about, I did not know that I was supposed to get permits. And the only time that I did figure out that I need permits is when I went with this new addition. I had questions for the inspector, and he's like, you should talk to zoning department first, and that's where that's why we're here right now. So, and I'm willing to fix, what needs to be fixed, as far as like make everything legal and stuff like that. So.
Okay. Thank you. If you don't have any further comments, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that has any questions or concerns? Seeing none, I'll take this conversation up here to the board. Dan, get us started.
Yeah, was a couple of my concerns to start with is, the no permitting, the after the fact permitting. I guess one of the questions I do have going in with the addition, with the variance for the addition is, has the sewer been looked at for the amount of rooms you're adding? I mean, I know you have them as sitting rooms and that kind of stuff, but technically they're bedrooms. So, I mean, you're adding 3 more bedrooms. Is your sewer going to be capable to handle it?
So I did talk to the sewer department, and he explained to me what needs to be done as far as the sewer to get with the new addition, what I need to do. So I know I'm aware of that. So, and I will work on it as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna say, yeah, he did speak. We had up at the front counter with one of our septic inspectors, and they pretty much mentioned, if you do want to convert those into like true bedrooms that are you're actually using them as bedrooms, to pretty much update your septic at that time.
Okay, so now, Aaron, with that being said, when does that have to be inspected or made a ruling? I mean, you're building the house. You've got a lounge area and an office with 2 full-size bathrooms up there. So, I mean, it's hard to argue that they're not going to be bedrooms.
I'm not gonna disagree there. I'm not our septic inspector, so I can't go off that. I'm just speaking for what our septic inspector pretty much said based off of their plans and what they're proposing at this time.
Okay, but I guess I'm concerned, how do we make sure the sewer is updated once we give permits?
The tough part is, I mean, and it's a very good point. There could be plenty of spaces where someone proposes a living room and without permits, someone comes in and builds it up, frames it up, turns it into a bedroom. We never know about it.
Right.
And at that time, technically, the septic would have likely needed to been addressed. So it's, in reality, it is on the honor system until we start seeing plans in place that we can try and address. So.
So, yeah, I do have concerns or reservations about, you know, the non-permitted stuff as far as the addition. I have concerns with the sewer, that the sewer is going to be able to handle a 5 or 6 bedroom home without being on the honor system, without making sure that's being addressed. As far as the 105 feet setback, if we weren't here with unpermitted things, you know, we're not getting any closer. The highway department does approve of it. But I do have those reservations.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Thank you. Likewise with Dan, I had some of the very same concerns. Going to the unpermitted ones, I'd like for him to apply for permits for each one individually. And of course,
That's typically how we handle most of our permits.
okay, so,
Home additions, I mean, we don't base, like, one permit is kind of one fee. It's, even if you apply for one permit or 10 permits, and it's the same items being applied for, you know, you're not losing any money or gaining any money. There's really no way around it. I mean, whatever's the easiest way typically, whether it's one permit or a few, outcome's gonna be the same.
okay. I thought that maybe, because they'll be double the normal price.
We don't decide that. That's the building inspectors. We can't actually, only time we can actually apply an after the fact fee is when they're applying for the Board of Adjustment. It would be up to the building official, I believe, to determine if it's gonna be after the fact fee or not on permits.
Because I thought that was pretty much standard, if you, after the fact.
I was told otherwise.
Okay, I did not know that. Learned something. Like Dan, I think the septic should be really, I don't know how you could grant that and then with an honor system. I think that should be,
I mean, I'm not into designing anything. There could potentially be conditions that either they cannot convert them to bedrooms unless the septic is updated. You could have a condition stating that even though they're not necessarily spelled out as a bedroom, they meet criteria for potentially one, and that they would have to get their septic updated within
can
X
do
number
that.
of time. I mean, assuming the applicant is okay with that, so.
okay. I think that gets me, yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Bob?
You said.
My first question is to Rachel. You know, we understand that I think there should be some sort of a penalty. Otherwise, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for, permission. You know, beg for forgiveness versus ask for permission. So I was wondering, is there some legal standard that penalties can be applied for not getting permits when required?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I can look into that.
Okay. Likewise with our former board members, I guess I look at this the same way. The time where there's leverage to get the septic updated is now. We certainly can make that a condition, so then the applicant can determine if he wants to go forward with this project, knowing that he's got to get his septic up to date. Just because we approve things doesn't mean that they have to build them. Now, is this going right above the garage?
Yes. My original garage, as you seen in the first picture, is 24 by 24. So, my car, one of the cars doesn't fit into the garage doors because it's a lot smaller, But that's where this whole project came to be. Is I gotta do something with the garage. But then if I'm gonna do something with the garage, I might as well add space because young growing family might as well add space to the house, and it's the easiest way to do it. But yes, the living area right above the garage.
Okay, and now is the footprint of the garage going to change much? Are you going longer or just higher?
So it is going out to the side, and so it's 24 by 24 right now. It will be 28 by 44 new garage.
Okay. Yeah, and then, what type of a septic system do you have now?
It's a mount,
mount.
and it's fairly new. It's probably like 5 years old. So I was told by this septic inspector that I do need to add to the septic. So if I'm adding just one bedroom, then I gotta get put a timer on it. If I'm adding two, then the mound or drain field needs to go bigger. So I know like the steps I gotta do, if I'm adding like this many bedrooms or this many bedrooms. So I'm aware of that, and obviously that needs to be addressed. That will be addressed.
Okay. Where is your septic system now on the property?
I guess we're then 960. Yeah.
Okay, so you have adequate space to add.
Yes.
It's not, up against a property line
no.
or too close to a building okay? So you have space to do it. I had another thought. When were the additions, that unpermitted additions added? Were they added by you?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you owned the property?
Like probably since 2018.
Okay.
April of 2018. I think that's when I closed on it. I'm not
Sure, close enough.
about that time.
Okay, so somewhere between 18 and well, we got the 23 picture, so somewhere in there, in between there. Okay, all right.
Thank you, Bob. I don't think the applicant acted in bad faith. These are small little things that I can see someone doing without thinking or realizing they needed a permit. However, we know that now. I think if the applicant came before us with this request for the deck or the porch, I would have approved it. So I'm fine with the after effect request. As far as the addition, the city and the township and the highway department's fine with it. I'm fine with it too. So as far as the after effect variance, it's there is a penalty. I think in the fees, I think they double. I think it's part of it. And if you can get those things approved as they're up to code, I could go along with the request. So those are my thoughts. With that said, are there any?
So it sounded like there was some concern about, as far as bedrooms go, one bedroom with the master suite. If you're doing your time or whatever, I'm not the septic guy, but this one, the lounge area, you took out this wall right now. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, that probably wouldn't classify it this time as a bedroom. And then if this wall here for the office was taken out temporarily until you decided if you wanted to convert them to bedrooms, you would then get a remodel plan submitted for these being converted to bedrooms and septic applied at the same time, if that addresses any of the board's concern. Or if you're willing to get a septic applied for at the same time, to show an update. I'm just hearing some of the concerns the board has and seeing if there's any way to.
I do share similar feelings with the septic system as well. This is a good time. We're going to be financing things. To come back later and all of a sudden you find out you can't finance, the repairs, upgrades that you need for the septic systems. I think it's a smart thing to take care of this right now, whatever those upgrades might be.
Yeah, I agree with that because you're looking at a complete full bathroom upstairs with two rooms that could very easily be turned into bedrooms. And, like you said, a growing family, you're going to potentially have challenges down the road with the sewer, and if we don't address it now, then we're not doing him justice and making sure everything is done correctly.
So that would be something you'd like to have added before he applies for a permit for this, have the septic.
Have a
go out
septic
there?
plan.
I agree. I am questioning still, you said you put the mound system in 2018?
That was done before me. So this house, when I bought it, it was a foreclosed. So whoever, I mean, I knew his name, but I forgot. He lived in it, and then he passed away. He was an older guy, so the bank took over the house, and before they could sell it, they had to redo the septic. So they did redo the septic right before they sold it to me.
They did a replacement 4-bedroom mound system in 2017. Looks like October 2017.
At that time, you kind of knew there was permits needed for things, so.
I did not know
That would have been before him. So this was.
Yeah, but he said that he talked to a septic guy, and he said.
That was right now. That
yeah,
was,
like
yeah,
when he
that's
came
right
in to
now.
apply
Okay,
for
'cause
these
I'm going back
permits.
5 years, I'm thinking,
No.
oh, there's some story ain't working. Okay. But I really think that each of those additions should be applied for separately, because there'd be a little more of a fee applied to it. You
We
can't do it-
calculate fees based on, and maybe Cheryl could correct me if I'm wrong, but fees are calculated based on like what it is, the space, and the square footage typically. So we don't do, well, one permit here is going to be this fee. If you apply for another permit later on for a deck and another permit on for a 3-season porch, 3 separate permits equal more. No, it's based on square footage. So if it all came in as one, the square footage is still the same, and so the fee is based off of that.
But if I may, if I go in and apply for a deck for my house, I pay a permit fee. Then I added a bedroom, I pay a permit fee.
Yep, but it's not a standardized permit fee based on, it's all square footage. So if I came in for a deck that was
So you're saying it's
100
all
square
rounded
feet
off?
now and 100 square feet in a year, theoretically, the permit fee should be the same as if I came in for 200 square feet right off the bat.
Okay. All right, yeah, I'd like to see them all permitted though, and
Yeah.
double
Yep.
fee.
All right. Any further discussion? Yeah, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve to allow the 10-foot by 12-foot unpermitted front porch, 14-foot by 18-foot unpermitted 4-season area, 14 by 25-foot unpermitted deck, and a 28-foot by 44.5-foot proposed addition to the existing home. The home would be 105 feet from the center line of the county road and no closer than what it is existing. After the fact, work is subject to building department approval, and all required permits for after the fact work are applied for within 60 days. Excuse me. Site plan noted as Exhibit A. Building plans noted as Exhibit B. And I would like to have a sewer updated for a minimum of adding on 2 bedrooms. Instead of just the master, I want one of the other rooms to be considered a bedroom. So sewer has to be compliant with that size of a home.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
So as far as the sewer would go, could we make it a little bit more open, the condition regarding somehow, depending on how the plans show up at our office, it would be determined by the building inspectors and our septic inspector what the size or what's needed for an adequate septic system. If we say, well, for 2 more bedrooms specifically, they decide, after pricing things out again, hey, we're gonna scrap this, we're just gonna make it a temporary big storage area, or leave it wide open for now, that we don't require additional septic when they don't have additional bedrooms at the time. I'm just thinking more of a catch-all way of, depending on, these plans could change. You guys are proving kind of the dimensions. If they decided they're gonna scrap the master suite and the walk-in closet and leave it all just kind of open storage and then try and do this 10 years down the road, that we're not requiring maybe them to do stuff with their septic unnecessarily.
Well, that's my concern, is that we do exactly what you're asking, and then within the walls, we never know what happens, and the sewer never gets upgraded and taken care of. So I'm looking at it as, instead of doing it as a 3-bedroom add-on, just a 2-bedroom, because at some point in time, it's potentially could be a bedroom, and even if he sells the property, somebody else is gonna convert it and be in the same situation, then have a sewer that's not compliant and working, and I know it'll go through inspections at the time of sales, but then it'll be all those challenges then.
So you're saying 5-bed?
2-bedroom, a 2-bedroom addition, instead of a 1-bedroom addition, it's a 2-bedroom addition.
Mr. Chair, maybe it would be more, I don't know, maybe it'd be better to say, you know, a septic system that suits a 5-bedroom home versus or a 6-bedroom home versus just adding 2 bedrooms. That doesn't mean much to someone who would come in, you know, that wasn't privy to our discussion here. This way, if it's designed for, you know, a 5-bedroom home, for example, someone like Bernie can come out there and measure it's so many feet wide, so many feet long, you're good to go, and that's the size of it. I think Mr. Miller would like to add a comment.
Yeah, Bernie Miller. Yeah, a couple things that are difficult with that is the septic code allows for a type 3 system to add time dosing, and you can have whatever size system you have, and it just is regulated to the mound system by the timer. So, you know, you could have a 10-bedroom house and only room for a 2-bedroom mound. It allows you to do that. So by code, you can do that if a type 3 system's allowed. So that's where they talked about adding the timer. You know, one thing that, you know, whether the bedrooms is the right way to do it. You know, we see 2-bedroom houses with 15 people in them. That doesn't necessarily work, you know, sometimes does. We see, 5-bedroom house or 6-bedroom house with 1 person living in there. You know, the sewer doesn't know how many bedrooms the house has, and it doesn't really care. It only cares about how much water it can handle. So, you know, it makes it very difficult to try to specify something like this, and I think it was a little bit where Aaron's going, but I think that you know, I mean, there's different ways you can deal with that. And one thing that I think is helpful is the county has their own size. The state has a smaller size, a minimum size. Okay, so for let's just say, for example, a 5-bedroom mound system in the state minimums needs 630 square feet of rock bed. Okay, and in the county, you need 750 square feet. You know, so the county makes you make it bigger. So it almost protects you from 1 extra bedroom almost from the state, you know, because of that. So a lot of times, you know, like the mound system's in Wright County, and I don't know if his is you know, county or state minimum the way it is now, but the systems the mound systems in Wright County, you know, are bigger than anywhere else we work, and they last longer, they work well. We very seldom have problems, and partially I think that's due to that. I mean, it costs a little bit more. It's nominal to make it just a little bit bigger. Sometimes we don't have room for that, so we go down to the state sizing or do something different. But just so you understand that part, you know, that there is some options. A person, you know, if he wanted to add 10 bedrooms, septic, you know, by code, he could say, a septic designer could come out there, design a system with, you know, just add time dosing to it, so it's regulated to not exceed the capacity it can handle, and it would be legal for whatever bedrooms you want, so without changing the system. So, you know, I'm not sure. I think that, you know, in some cases it makes sense to look at, you know, his, you know, anticipated use because all you can do is really think what he's doing and not the next person that's buying it, and he might not know if he's going to have a set of twins coming up or whatever, but in general, you can do the best you can with that. And, we see many cases, people came in, designed a 3-bedroom mound, all of a sudden they finished the basement, now it's a 5-bedroom mound. The mound still works just fine, and it's partially because it's oversized some from what this, from the county or what the state minimum is, so.
I take it, Bernie. So we do have a motion and a second on the table.
Mr. Chair, I do have some more discussion. Rachel, did you find anything else about a penalty? Because otherwise, the double fee, there's many times I'd pay double fee if I could do what I want. But there's always the fear of additional penalty that deters you.
I haven't, in my brief searching, I haven't found anything that
Okay,
shows any ability to impose just a fine.
okay.
I guess I would point out too, and I don't know if this is gonna address your question, but the double fee is just, we can apply that to get in front of the Board of Adjustment. There's nothing stating the Board of Adjustment ever has to make an approval. So someone's paying the double fee just to see if they could get it, and as we've seen a couple of times in the last year, people have paid a double fee and still had to remove their stuff. So, I mean, that is also kind of a penalty, having to remove your items. So I don't know if that helps, but.
Mr. Chair, also regarding the septic, it appears that the applicant has room. He doesn't have any space concerns or, constraints. So adding on to his mound system, I think would probably still be a minimum type of expenditure. And like Mr. Mall had, or maybe it was you that said that, if you're getting loans and that sort of thing, what's a couple $1,000 more,
Or going into time dosing. Maybe there doesn't have to be.
Or
added
both.
onto or time dosing.
Yeah.
It's just to make sure, my concern is to make sure that the sewer can handle it, whether it's time dosing, adding on to it, whatever, but just, I would like to make sure that the sewer can handle what we're adding on. And that's what I was hoping my motion was reflecting.
So the way I understood Dan's motion was to make it county standard of 750 square foot mound.
Well,
kinda what
that's the county standard. I'm just asking that it be considered to be adding on 2 additional bedrooms.
Well, me feeling that the past, there's been some without permit, I think we should, and if he came in to build this, he would be held to the standard. There's plenty of room there, so I think he'd be held to the 5-bedroom, 750 square foot mound system. There's room to grow to that.
Which dosing would handle, which I think, and I don't think that's a terribly big expense, to have that dosing in place, ready to go. Because I was in a similar situation years ago. I added on, little did I know, little kids grow up into teenagers and voila, system failed. And I'm really glad the county made me put a new mound system in, so, because, trust me, they'll use a lot of water,
But I'm thinking the county wouldn't say yay if you came in with this plan and it's 5 bedrooms, we would ask for 750 square foot mound system.
I think
if
the
we-
750 was just an example. I mean, they're going to be based off of whatever the plan is showing. I guess the motion that I have written down was you'd have to update the septic so it could be capable of handling 2 additional bedrooms from what is existing already. I mean, our septic guys are still going to look at a plan to make sure it's adequately sized, regardless if they go through BOA or not. And so I don't know if the intent was
And that-
regardless 2 additional bedrooms, or it was review by like the county septic inspector to make sure what is being proposed on their plan is adequately treated or managed by the septic system.
And I guess that was the intent of my motion. Right now, building inspectors would be looking at it as a 1-bedroom office and a lounge room. So I want to make sure they're looking at it as a 2-bedroom.
Okay.
And then whatever the county requires.
The septic guy would based
the
off of
septic guy
additional
would
two
base
bedrooms?
that off of making sure that we're looking at a 2-bedroom addition and not a 1-bedroom. And then whatever the county requires, whether it's dosing, you know, whatever the county requires for that is what the intent of my motion was for.
And I'll second it.
We'll go with that, okay. Any further discussion or anything? None? All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Barry Zander request. Could the applicant please step forward, state your first and last name?
Barry Zander.
All right, so this request, it is located at 2268 Hoyt Avenue Northwest in Albion Township. The property is 10.0 acres. It is zoned general agriculture, land use plan agricultural as well. The property was part of a division in 2024 that split out 10 acres, leaving the remainder with 0 building entitlements. This specific request would be to allow 23 animal units on a 10-acre property. And a variance is required because 5.0 animal units is the maximum for a 10-acre property. The applicant did meet with the township prior to applying for the request. The township, I think initially they approved 12 cattle instead of 5. The applicant did end up speaking with our Wright County feedlot officer, Tracy. And so we recommended that they go back to the township and request 23 animal units based on what they were actually trying to have on the property. And so that number was derived from that conversation with the feedlot administrator. The township did update their motion at a following meeting to allow 23 animal units. If the applicant was okay with an approval being void if the property were sold to someone other than family, and further mitigated by active manure management plan. I didn't receive any written responses from the public, so that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to add?
Just that the manure I would haul on my own property, which is a half a mile away, none would be on the 10 acres.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, I think everything else was covered pretty good. And the facilities, it was, obviously dairy cattle for years, so they're, plenty intact and, Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll open this up to the public. If anyone has any questions or concerns about this request? Sir, if you could just step aside, this gentleman will step in, and if you could just state your name, please.
John Euchre, one of the supervisors of the Albion Township. This farm has been in the family way before planning and zoning was in Wright County here. So basically, all it did is the family put a line across the property. All these restrictions, I don't really know. To me, it could be grandfathered in because it was there before the zoning was in, so. And I guess one other question I got here is, why is animal units so important on these 10-acre parcels when you can do anything else with it other than that and nobody cares?
If you could step aside, she could probably answer that question for you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Board. Tracy Giannacoula, Feedlot Program Administrator. I have been asked that question before. The 10 acres or less, the restriction on the animal units is because we don't know where that manure is going to go. It's not a number where generally I need to try and regulate acres available for manure. It's extra paperwork for both sides. In this case, it's challenging because the lot was split recently, and the applicant's family knew that when they split it off, the animal units would be restricted. But it has been a registered feedlot, larger size, like you said, dairy, history, when the family owned everything around it. He does still have acreage. It's just not contiguous. So that's kind of the rub here. It makes it challenging. The animal units themselves, 5, in most cases, it could be utilized on the property without a huge amount of issue. 23 might over apply on that acreage. And as explanation of the 12 animal unit and the 23 animal unit with the confusion with the township originally is cow-calf, and you keep the calves and you keep the yearlings and you have a bull, and so the numbering was just a little off from the first discussion with the township, so.
Thank you.
They do have the acreage available for manure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll take this conversation up to the board. And Dan?
I do have another question for Tracy, if you may.
Did you notice I didn't go all the way back to Madison?
So, I know we had the last meeting, we had somebody ask for 15, and we went around a ways with that. And they had neighboring properties that were gonna accept the manure. And one of the things was, we were happy that there were a diverse amount of animals instead of just one. Like that was chickens, ducks, and all these things came up to 15 units.
Okay.
Does that worry you at all, that it's just one animal? Cows, basically? Okay.
No, actually, sometimes if you know a species, you do a better job.
Okay, so you have no concerns at 22? or 20?
Not with the family's history, no.
Okay, that's all I had for questions.
Thank you, Dan. Bob?
Yeah, from a town, I sit as a township supervisor, your viewpoint is different. You try to, accommodate your township residents and that sort of thing. But when we look at these 10-acre properties, this one happens to be out in a rural area. The one last month or last meeting was out in a rural area. But a lot of times these 10 acres pieces there's houses like all around them. And so there's where that half animal unit really comes into play. And so when we have to look at hardship of what makes this 10-acre parcel special. And, it's difficult, especially when the split has been so recent and, the property, it could be 11 acres or 12 acres or 15, and they could have had as many animals or a lot more animals than what the restriction is. So when they applied for 10 acres, they knew what they were going to get. And so, I kind of sit on both sides of the fence here because I understand the situation. There's plenty of places to put manure on his own property. But this whole thing could have been avoided if they would have kept more property when they made a split a year ago.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Yeah, Bob stole a little bit of my thunder. Because that was kind of my concern, when you have family or you're doing family splits, that's fine. I know hands change, families change, but when you take the main farm site and you bring it down to 10 acres with a five animal unit restriction, and you just did it a year ago, you kind of knew what you had. And as far as, that question of why you can do other things, if you went to work and put a 10 acres right down in ag land in Rockford Township, right in some of the areas on the border, and put a large amount of animals and housing developments nearby, it's a whole different game. Right now, we're in Albion Township. Last week, we were down in south, down by Howard Lake. It's a different thing. It's apples and oranges, and that's why we need the 5 animal units per 10 acres that the county has and we've been using. this is a situation where we've got 10 acres. It was split off knowingly that different properties going different places. And at that time, we should have been talking about more animals when we split it off or when it was done. As far as manure area, I mean, you can see the overview. We're in ag land, and I don't want to stifle agricultural, but I want to make sure that it's very clear that adding animals to this property is much different than adding animals to properties in Rockford Township. But yeah, I mean, it was just done recently and split off, and now we're asking to add more animals by the same family. It should have been done when it was done, or more land should have been retained when it was split. So,
Thank you, Dan. I don't have any issues. I share their same concerns, but when I looked at, based on the family history and Tracy's comments, you owning the land for manure to be put, and how the management plan brought that level up, the number of animal units to 23 to more of a realistic one, you know. I found that a good, you're in a rural area, you have egg buildings, and you're under feedlot management. So I feel very confident that things will be good. The only thing I would like to add, and I think the township mentioned it, is that if you were to ever sell that 10 acres, that this variance ceases.
Yes, I would be willing to sign an agreement if need be for that. That's no problem.
Those are my thoughts. With that said, do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to allow 23 animal units on a 10-acre property. Township approves, and it is in a rural area with no developments nearby. Not to exceed 23 animal units. Manure application agreements submitted by March 1 of each year to the Wright County Feedlot Officer. And upon the approval, it expires once a property is transferred.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second it. Any discussion?
Did you guys want to include, the approval expires once property is transferred with the exception of like immediate family?
I did not put that in my own motion.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we've got the Lundin Farms request. Could the applicant or someone speaking on behalf please step forward, state your first and last name?
I'm Gail Lundin Brandt.
All right, so the request we have, it is located at 10366 10th Street Northwest in Albion Township. Properties involved are parcel 201-000-294-300, which is the 61.5 acre property, and PID 201-000-294-100, which is 20.5 acres. The request, it's to add the, what's called the south half of the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter to PID 201-000-294-100 from PID 201-000-294-300. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. So existing, we got the 60-ish and the 20-ish acre properties. They would like to add that north half of that quarter, so about 20 acres to this property, leaving approximately 40 acres for each. The reason we could not do it administratively is because it does not follow full quarters for each property. The southern would, but the northern one would not. So that's the reason why we're here in front of the board for the lot line adjustment. The township, they did approve of the request, saying there'd be no change in ag land being farmed, and I did not receive any written responses from the public. So that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add?
No,
Okay. With that, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that has any questions, comments? Okay. I will take this conversation up to the board. And Bob, get us started?
So, what's the intent? I mean, there's got to be more of a reason just to get 240s. Is it for building purposes or selling purposes? What's the purpose?
It's not for building purposes. We're a partnership, and one member of the partnership, my brother, wants to purchase the farmhouse. And it's a little more affordable if it is on 40 acres rather than 60 acres.
Okay. I guess I don't have a problem with it because both properties, after the lot line adjustment would have adequate road frontage, access, there's nothing being landlocked. So I guess I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Yeah, looking at it, I mean, we've got road frontage. We're not landlocking, we're connecting the two together. We're still leaving 240s in the front. So I'm okay with what's being proposed.
Yep, thank you, Dan.
Much the same as my two board members. I have no issues with it.
Likewise, I'm good with it. With that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request to add the south half of northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of PID 201000, not 294100, from PID 201000294300. Considerations would be subject to survey, subject to administrative order, and concept plan noted Exhibit A.
Do I
Thank
hear
you.
a second?
I'll second it.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Hey.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Clint Nelson request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward, state your first and last name?
Clint Nelson.
I'm Crystal Portillo.
Tyler Portillo.
All right, so this request here, it's located at 3894 59th Street Northwest in Maple Lake Township. The property is 0.31 acres. That's both of those that have to be, or both parcels that have to be owned in common equal that 0.31 acres. It's zoned urban rural transition, and it's located across the road from Maple Lake, which is classified as a general development lake. A variance was granted in 2024 for a new home that was no closer than 5.7 feet from the east side yard. You can kind of see it on the plan up here. And then this specific request is an update to that 2024 approval to construct a new single-family dwelling. Same thing, 5.7 feet from the east side property line, but it's slightly larger than previously approved and still within that same side yard setback. As far as township response goes, I didn't get anything from Maple Lake Township, and I did not get any written responses from the public either. So that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicants have anything you wish to add?
We think it's important to share why we're back, or why the Portillos are back for an additional variance. Last year, they've been working on this project and thinking about it for about 5 years. Last year, when they finally decided to follow through with their dream of building a home that they would like to have on their property, they were also dealing with some family health events. Crystal lost her father last year, and during that time, they had time to think about what they were really doing with the property, how they wanted to be stewards of the property. They were trying to be very cautious with the means that they had to be able to build this property, because they are going to build mostly with cash, and so they want to be good stewards of what they have. when her dad passed, they also inherited some additional assets, and they didn't know what they wanted to do with those at first. They spent all winter planning. I met the Portillos in January when I met them and let them know that I was launching a general contracting business, and we started to work together on putting a plan together. On March 6th is when I met with the Portillos to go through with what their building plan would look like and cost. And I reached out to Aaron that morning because they had a question about being able to add a basement to their property. And I didn't know if they'd have the ability to do that or not. And shared the plans with Aaron, and he let me know that what they were intending to build was outside of the variance that they had gotten the previous year, back in 2024. And so I met with them on March 6th afternoon. We knew what we had to do in order to try to get a new variance. We contacted the surveyor, we contacted the architect. They were gracious enough to get us our updated documents by the end of business on March 7th so we could get the application in. But ultimately it comes down to wanting to be really good stewards of what they have received, being good stewards of their property. Can you go to the shot of the properties? There's a 5-acre parcel that's behind on the north side of these properties that they're also going to be acquiring from family. So this is something they want to invest in for the next 30 years plus. The variance that they're applying for isn't affecting the neighbor to the east. The variance that they were granted last year it's going to be the same impact this year. The difference is a small addition above on the upper level, and then the basement if it's allowed.
Anything else? Okay. All right, with that, what I'll do is open it up to the public. If they have any questions or concerns, is anyone seeing none? Take the conversation up here, and Dan?
Yeah, I guess my question to start out with Aaron, as far as what they're applying for, everything is the same as a current variance other than expanding into a basement?
Slightly. I'll try and point out some differences, and I think the applicant could help me out as well too if I miss something. But if you look on this 2024 proposal, see if we can zoom in here, kind of see as far as like this all goes, they were going to strip, I think, that existing deck off or whatever was there. They had a proposed deck here. This little area, if I'm not mistaken, was a mechanical room or proposed to be. That was going to still be remaining as like a 1 level in their 2024 approval. You look at 2025, that area there.
Yeah, there you go.
Back to here quick. They added a little deck off the back, and then they're going to fill in this area a little bit and add a little more here. It's not going any closer to anything as far as like setbacks go. Then you can see here where it was left off as kind of a single level, that mechanical space. 2025, you can see everything's just kind of been filled in as far as that goes. And then, yes, I believe the basement is what they're proposing here, where they didn't have that in their initial plans. So, I mean, it's a slight increase, but as far as setbacks go, which is the reason why they're here, it's not going any closer than what they already had an approval for.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Yeah, and looking at your proposal on the plan, it was 14.1% coverage. So we're still within our means there. We're under our 25% lot coverage. Impervious is at 23.9, so we're meeting those things. I mean, technically, they still have a current variance to be able to, for the distances. What they're proposing to add is a basement, add in some of those other spots. I don't see where it's going to really change what we've already approved and vetted before. I guess I'll see what other people feel.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Yeah, I feel quite different. My first question is based to Aaron. There's nothing saying they can't go closer to the shed, correct? Because this is a whole total tear down now.
Well, I mean,
Originally,
they were planning a full tear down anyways, their approval last year.
But we
As far as
based it-
the shed goes, I've got nothing in zoning ordinance that says they can't be closer. I believe you start getting into building inspector or state building code when you get within a certain distance. Don't quote me. I want to say 5 feet or less to the shed. You start having to fire protect things. But I don't want to get too involved. I mean, there's probably pros and cons to going closer. Maybe the applicant can speak on this.
There's the potential for a well issue too. There's a well between the shed and the home.
My whole thing though is once you guys decide to excavate the basement, because last time the footings are what, well, we can't make you move the footings is how I felt, and so I went with the footings, but if you're excavating the whole basement now, it isn't much of a move to just do the footings, because by the time you dig it out, waterproof it for the basement,
Yep.
you might as well just move the house. That's how I feel, and you don't even have to be here. You move that house to pass all the codes, you don't need a variance.
The well, though. There's a
What's the
well.
setback?
Huh?
What's the line setback? What's the minimum?
15 feet. And it was discussed, I think initially, this wasn't factoring in the well. There was potential if they slid everything very close to that shed last year that I think they could get close to that 15 feet. As far as well setbacks go, I think it's 3 feet from the overhang of a building. Wells can potentially be moved, but being that that wasn't anything kind of planned up front, I don't know how that affects the septic either, so.
Yeah, because I just see a potential problem. You're right at the border of your, right at the border impervious right now, and you're gonna need a walkway over to the shed and everything. You move that, you don't have to be here, you get all your, you could get the 15 feet, meet that, you set the house back further if you have to, but have it go into the shed, a door.
The concern that I would have is usability between passing through those buildings. I don't know, if you're gonna move it so that you meet with inside of that setback, you're gonna be encroaching on that shed. You're gonna have construction issues building it as close to that shed, right? And to be able to correct any disturbance to the neighbor is far easier, and in the end will provide a better product for both the neighbor and for them.
But this is gonna be popping out of the ground a lot more too than what you talked about before. Yeah, you're gonna have knee walls and stuff on top of the concrete, because it only had a 4 foot.
Our elevation above grade should be very similar, if a course higher, is what we expect.
But the house itself will be up higher.
Not from the previous variance. For what they were approved for last year, it's the same height from the neighbor.
Okay, because I know you're gonna be
The
putting
only,
a
the only,
basement down there.
yeah, correct, but
in
the,
your bedroom.
correct.
Are you
but-
going
but
down?
Going down.
So then you're removing all the footings then.
We have to remove the footings that they currently have, right?
So then you might as well not use us and just set the house where you can get it in there, and you don't need a variance. But
So I'm
that's
not
my
the,
point. Huh?
I'm not a contractor. I don't know how.
I'm a builder
How,
too.
yeah, so Mr. Vick is, he's got, so I just have a question regarding, like you guys were talking about excavation. If they were to meet the 15-foot side yard setback, it's likely gonna put it about 4 feet, maybe 5 from the shed. I don't know if that affects, anything when you're excavating either, like potential for damage of that existing shed.
The house can be changed a little bit too now, because you would be building a whole new house, so you turn it a little bit different way. But you wouldn't need this board, I don't think. If you're gonna put a full basement in there, that's just my take from what it was last time. That's why we passed it last time, I felt, because you were keeping the footings.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Bob?
Yeah, Mr. Vick makes an excellent point, because before we were going to stay on the same footprint. And now that the footprint is going to be removed, it does certainly bring up the discussion for sure that the house design, could change to meet setbacks. It could meet the setbacks just even in that, in the lot that it is there. You wouldn't have to get any closer to the shed if you redesigned your house to fit the lot. We got a 1/3 acre lot. There's many houses that have 1/3 acre lots that meet the setbacks. And then maybe this board should consider making you do likewise. And I agree with Mr. Vick that, last year, the 5'7" setback was because you were going to use the existing foundation. Now that that's not on the table, maybe that's something that we should look at. And I still can't get my hands around, if you're adding an extra room above, why are you not higher?
The elevation doesn't change because you're filling in the space on the second floor that we left off on the original build, or that they left off on the original build, right? So if we're adding space, want to go back to the hand drawing? So they're filling in that gap.
Oh, okay, all right,
So the impact to the neighbor, it's the exact same.
okay.
But the point was, you had a 4-inch slab, now you're gonna have floor joists, you're raising it up, because you're gonna have a basement there. So you're raising the whole house up higher. And I'm sorry.
An elevation can be
Not
affected
my
depending on
space.
what we find when we excavate, water table and some of that kind of stuff too.
I'm sorry, I'm taking your spot.
That's fine. This is your wheelhouse. This is
It
what
is,
you,
yeah,
this
I
is
just-
your expertise here.
Okay, that was just my point, that it is gotta be higher if you're putting a basement in there. You have 6 foot, it showed 4-foot footings or something on there before, and now you're gonna have to have, you ain't crawling around 6 foot in the basement, you know, so you're going up.
And the distance to the east neighbor? How close are you to the east neighbor?
It's
Fast
right-
proposed?
It's 5.7 from the property line.
From the property line, how far from the property line is the east neighbor?
That I don't know. So they would guess 15 feet.
Okay. All right. Because, you see some of these building developments, especially in town, you almost can reach across and shake hands with the neighbor next door printer. And this is out in the, not in town, so. Yeah,
I can't guarantee its accuracy, right? Because the house is 5.7 now, we're getting about 7 here. So this is saying 28 feet to the property line, let's just say even 25 feet. So maybe their proposal would be 30 feet or so from the neighbor to the east house.
and these building plans wouldn't affect the septic system any? What's there is already approved?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, Mr. Vick brings up an interesting point. 5'7", you're adding that story, and, how are you gonna do maintenance? And here we have an opportunity to give you a little more room to set up a set of, some scaffolding, or get that ladder extended out so you're not on your neighbor's property. That's what I'm looking at. I would like to see that moved over as much as possible, at least another couple feet. I don't know what, think about what's a scaffolding, set of scaffolding. I mean, that's 6 feet wide, something like that.
Yep.
All of a sudden, there you are, you're on your neighbor's property. And so we have an opportunity to kind of make that a little bit wider, make it easier for you to do your work. You got probably good neighbors now, but you don't know what you're gonna have next, next ones that move in. So, yeah, to me, it just makes sense. This is an opportunity to maybe make some changes by moving it a little bit closer toward the shed. So those are my thoughts. Any comments or?
Would we have some room to work with inside a 10 to 15 foot setback and give the neighbor a little bit more grace, but give us some allowable to work between the shed and the new construction?
So you're asking for like a variance of 10 feet? I don't know what you guys feel.
Well, I guess I look at it and we all have good arguments, okay, and good reasoning. But we had passed this once before at 5.7 and agreed upon it. And I know we said that you're gonna be using the same, I was just going through the minutes while you guys were talking. But what happens when you plan on going on top of those footings? You tear the house down like they're planning and going on the same footprint, and the footings maybe are compromised, so you have to put in new footings. even if they're putting in a new basement, they're putting in new footings and doing those things, we've approved it at 5.7. I mean, we vetted this a year ago, and they have a current one where they could not be here and be doing it at 5.7. And I very much agree with what is being discussed, but at the same point, we've already told them they could do it at 5.7. And now and I understand the new construction and doing, but we should have said that then.
Well, we were I was mentioning that
Yep,
several
yep.
times then.
No, but I agree, you were bringing those
And the
points up.
problem is, you're excavating all the way around this house now, if you do it this new plan. Before, you didn't have to. You could have done it, now they got a waterproof, so you're digging it all out anyways. You're gonna be digging all these footings, all down the footings, you gotta get it insulated and waterproofed, and you're gonna make a mess. And it also limits the neighbor from putting addition on if he wants to, then all of a sudden you're squeezing them in, you know? If he goes 15, he's 5. I just think, I'm not trying to be a jerk, I'm just saying, as long as you got a new, fresh palette there, paint something that fits in there, you know, and I think you could. There's plenty of room. And the way it sits, you're gonna have to put a walkway to that garage eventually. Now you're over the impervious. I mean, it'd just make it a lot nicer for you guys too, if you did it how it would fit best on there.
I actually don't disagree. I just don't know if the 15 feet to meet the variance is as doable without being on site. And I don't want to encroach on that shed to where we're within 18 inches, 2 feet, 3 feet of that shed, right? But I do agree, if we can set that back off the property to give us one more room to work, less impact on the neighbor, 100% agree.
I just,
To
10
be
feet's
clear, I'm
better
not
than
asking
nothing.
for 15 feet. I'm asking, you know, something in between there, you know. I
10
think there's
feet
good-
would-
Maybe what we need to do is continue this. Applicants have heard what we've discussed. You go back to the drawing board and see what you can do and what you do need. And if we continue this, we'll see you next month. Or if you don't need us, then you won't see us.
Can we ask for a 10-foot today?
I think it'd be best if it was written up, and I would really like to see a plan of how you're getting from the shed to the house too, because there's no other garage, so you're gonna be walking across there when you park. To include that impervious on that final drawing.
He does ask a good question. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward. Can we have 10 feet? I would be willing to work with 10 feet.
I think you could ask
myself.
that.
Yeah, if you want to ask that.
Can I just add one thing too? The reason why we did kind of make the house this design and everything is because from the approval from last year, I wasn't here, so I wasn't understanding that we couldn't have that extra little piece above the, that second area. I thought, because at first our thoughts were just gonna be to add that little spot and not add the basement. And then our excavators just said that we are up on a higher spot in our neighborhood, that a basement would be, probably work out okay. And so that's kind of why the house was designed the way it was because we were kind of going off of those, from last year, so.
The basement is what kind of throws a wrench in it for me.
Yeah.
I don't know about the rest of it.
I'm fine
Yeah.
with 10.
So I mean,
following.
I would be okay to ask for 5 more feet and see what you guys think of that, or an extra 10 feet.
I'm fine with that too.
Let's put up for a motion. I hear a motion?
But the only problem I have with that is the impervious. I'd like to see him have it away from the shed to the house drawn out. I mean,
But we can put that in the motion that they cannot exceed their 25% impervious. I mean, we're allowed at that.
okay.
You know, I mean, they just, however they do it, they cannot exceed their 25% impervious.
And part of our post-inspection and to get the CO is gonna be that all the impervious is to code, if I'm understanding it correctly. So the driveway on the east lot has to be removed, the 2 sheds in the back have to be removed before they're allowed to have their CO.
I'd just like to see a walkway of some sort kind of proposed, because I know it'd be something that you guys would just have to squeeze in
We
later.
currently do have one, actually.
Yeah,
Because
I
we
see
walk
you're
back
moving
and
it.
forth right now, so we do currently have one. I guess I wasn't thinking it needed to be on there, but.
See, if you flip that house around, you wouldn't need us at all, and you could have it real nice, in my opinion. Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request to construct a new single-family dwelling 10 feet from the east side property line We'll have site plan noted as Exhibit A, building plans noted as Exhibit B, cannot exceed 25% impervious.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any further discussion?
Did you guys want to add any as-built survey at the end, just having essentially the surveyor come back out and verify sheds were gone, impervious doesn't exceed the 25%?
Yep.
So moved.
Noted. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry. I had you taping there a lot too, didn't they? Oh,
Thank you, that was a good insight. Good. Yeah,
It's tough, you know, but.
I think it's this last one, right?
Correct.
waterproof it.
All right, last item on the agenda, we've got the Ryan Blake request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf? Wow, they're already stepped forward, so please state your first and last name.
Ryan Blake.
Bernie Miller.
All right, so this request here, it is located at 4678 Fillmore Avenue Northwest in Maple Lake Township. The property is 0.63 acres, zoned urban rural transition and located on Ramsey Lake, which is classified as recreational development. So there was a variance granted in 2018 to allow a new home on a type, I believe 4 septic system. That would have been 68.7 feet from the lake. At that time, it was conditioned that any structures must be guttered, that direct runoff to a rain garden or other stormwater management plan that follows best management practices. Slope must remain vegetated. House limited to 3 bedrooms in accord with the septic design. Any structure exceeding 3 bedrooms must come back to the board. I mean, that variance being that it was granted in 18? Yes. It's since expired. So as far as that goes, this request is going to be for a new home or new single-family dwelling, but being that it's proposed to be serviced by a holding tank, even though the house meets setbacks, our ordinance technically says you got to have an actual septic system if possible. So that is why we are here. Let me check. I know I got an email from Bernie regarding the township portion because I never did receive anything from them directly. The septic holding tank variance was approved for 4678 Fillmore as presented in the Maple Lake Township meeting of March 18th, 2025. Vernon Haig, Township Supervisor. So that's what I have there. I didn't receive any written responses from the public, so that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to add?
This is your show.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so this is one, just to be clear, I think that as far as the minutes from the township, I think they had an assistant clerk here at the meeting, so the minutes didn't get posted, but we did get a hold of Vern and he sent that over, so.
Sorry to interrupt. I should clarify too, just for the record purposes, that response form was emailed to me from Bernie Miller it was a text message from Vernon at Maple Lake Township,
Yes.
correct?
So it's, kind of unofficial, I would say. But they approved it in 18, a different request as well. So, so we had looked at this numerous times. I know back in I don't know if people are familiar with the history, but back in like 98 or something, around that era, the township was interested in fixing that whole side of the lake. There was just a number of problems with sewers. I think the state was after the county, and the county was interested in doing that. So we had looked at options of connecting to the sewer, doing a community system. Since a number of people out there have put in type 4 systems, there is a number of holding tanks out there. A lot of them homes were existing, previously built. On the north end, there was some lots that were not built on. And this happens to be one of them. It's actually 2 lots. It's fairly steep. It's not, does not meet the criteria for a bluff, but is a steep slope, which does create challenges for trying to do a mound system. So we initially looked at this and, looked at basically two areas available. There's one up by the road that has some fill soil, probably when they did the road. Pretty high risk, would definitely be a type 4, and due to the slope and soils, just not really super comfortable with that. As you can see, it does have a driveway that navigates down through there. And so trying to work with that, the areas within that driveway are basically disturbed. So it basically makes that really difficult. Dealing with Ryan, he's, really wants to have a cabin. I mean, they don't differentiate between a cabin and a house in the county. And we can never control what would happen in the future there. But his intent was not to build a house. He wants to build a cabin on the lake there. So when we started looking at that, it's like, well, we could think about, possibly just doing holding tanks. I think that'd be a good use. If it stayed as a holding tank or a cabin forever, the holding tanks would be a good use for that. If someone wanted to live there, we'd still have an option to put in that sewer down below. I think that's going to be really difficult to try to build a mound system down there. There's a bunch of, and I think Aaron, you maybe have pictures, might be from the previous thing, but there's some really nice big trees down there. And I think they would have to come out, it'd essentially be, it's definitely possible. I just don't know. It's going to be really hard to get all that material down to build that mound, and it's going to be too close to the lake, and the soils are not 100% great down there either. So the design is for a reduced size mound for a 3-bedroom, which is allowed if you do pre-treatment and do a type 4 system. Type 4 systems on seasonal use are not always the greatest. If no one's there for 2 weeks, it's sitting there, your aerator running, doing nothing. They like to be used. So it's not necessarily the greatest use for something like that. But the option's still available down the road if need be. But, I think it's a good use of the property with a holding tank,
I just tried running through that old public hearing file again. I did initially. I didn't see any photos from
Okay,
trees or anything, so.
that's fine.
Thank you. If there's no further comment, I'll open up to the public. Is there any public? If you could just step aside and if you would state your name, please, and ask help.
My name is Chiami Ely. The only reason I'm really here is to just kind of hear what's going on because I live right across the lake from this property and belong to the Ramsey Lake Association. And we just want to make sure that whatever is taking place, because you had mentioned that in the past, there have been some leaks from other septic systems and stuff that have polluted the lake a little bit. So we're trying to be a little bit more conscientious. So I'm just here just to see what his options were and what works for him, but not to restrict anything. Okay, so just to say that. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
If I could respond to that for just a second. Something I learned at the township meeting was that their opinion was the holding tank would be better for the lake than a septic field would be as well, for the leak purposes, and it's nice to meet you.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no further comments from the public, I'll take this up to the board, and I think Bob, get us started.
All right.
It's fine if Bob wants to go. I don't care.
Okay. So, it's not far from the city. Does the city have any plans of doing like a Green Lake project where they would go around Ramsey Lake? Because there's quite a few homes on Ramsey Lake, and it's really quite close to the city. That might be actually a support of your holding tank philosophy. actually, because, you know, you just have the holding tank and then wait for the city to come and put it around there. Because all the affluent from the whole city goes out to Albion Township to the treatment plant there, and same as Howard Lake and stuff. So the distance is very close there. So it probably wouldn't get there in time for you to build your cabin, however.
You want me to elaborate?
Yes,
On
please.
that? So back in the late 90s, might have been early 2000, this portion of the lake did created a subordinate service district, which allows them to, you know, within the township to do extra special projects like that. And it was kind of because of the sewer. And so at that time, we looked at doing a community sewer for all of it. And it needed support for that. And there was mixed support, and I think there was some issues with how they set the subordinate service district up, so it got kind of taken away, had to redo it. You know, there was always talk with the city, and at that time, the city sewer didn't run down 7 right on this side of the lake. That came afterwards. And so there was multiple discussions, because really probably the right answer or a good answer would have been to connect to the city. But the problem with the city is if it went to the city, they would have to annex it, and they were going to want to redo roads, storm sewer, curb and gutter assessments. It just got out of control. It wouldn't have just been the sewer. There's actually a lift station. There was a lift station. I don't know if they changed it now, but there was a lift station right out on the edge of town there. And so it ended up being that it was basically the people that were there, I don't think really could have afforded the assessments to do that. And with the technology of new sewers, you know, I think we went through on a lot of them existing houses. I think I can think of probably, you know, 6, 8, 10 maybe that have type 4 systems for places that didn't have room to have a mound or something like that. So technology's allowed us to fix a majority of them. The hardest ones, and that's why this one's probably left, is the ones that have a really steep slope. And, you know, you take a steep slope and really, you know, some really tight clay around this area, it makes it really hard. So I think that even when the sewer project went through down 7, there was even some more discussions about connecting to it. I'm not going to say that it's never going to get connected, but until the land, I don't think it's going to ever get connected until the city annexes and develops the land, the farmland south of town. At that point, it may, but it's not feasible, you know, being that half these people were forced to fix their sewer during this whole process and spent $30,000-$40,000 on a sewer and now they want them to hook up. Then people are now not advocates of connecting up, and so you need the votes and to get annexed, and it's kind of a mess. I honestly don't think it's going to happen in, you know, the next 10 or 20 years until they open up the land use and Maple Lake expands houses all the way down through that ag area. So.
Okay. So now, if this cabin would be sold and it has a holding tank, does the variance apply to the next person as well, or does that create a problem for the next potential buyer?
I mean, certainly the next potential buyer might not like it, but I mean, if you approve a house, you know, within a setback or on a holding tank, I mean, it's good for as long as it's good for. Until they decide to do something different. They ask to add an addition on at that point, whatever. I mean, or submit new plans for additional bedrooms. Our septic guy may require some additional stuff, but for the time being, I mean, this house can be bought and sold 20 times. If approved on a holding tank, it's gonna be able to stay on a holding tank.
Okay, and I assume that you'd have some sort of a contract or subscription with a pumper that would come in so often, or is it as needed? How often does the tank get pumped?
Well, I mean, the county doesn't actively enforce holding tank agreements, and generally in counties that do, they require you to have an agreement with someone, and that person that's the maintainer or pumper says that they're going to pump the tank as needed to prevent it from overflow, and the person that has the place is going to say that they're going to contact the person when it's at 75% capacity and needs to be pumped with ample time for them to get there, and then it gets handled that way. I mean, there's numerous places out there, and I don't think that, the people that are on holding tanks, I think that some of the counties that, we'll put it this way, some of the counties that do this, try to enforce or try to have this requirement, but that requirement then becomes, from a legal standpoint, it's up to the county attorney if someone's not doing something to enforce that. And even if they didn't have a holding tank, if their sewer was leaking or something like that, they still have the same enforcement. They can still come out and make somebody do it. And, so it's kind of low hanging fruit on the totem pole. It wouldn't be out of line to have a condition that a person, maintains a contract with a company to pump it in this situation. I don't think that would be out of line.
And for your knowledge, I have spoken with Melgard Services about doing just that.
Okay. Mr. Miller, just for my education, how does one know that the tank is 75% full? Is there some sort of a float gauge, or how does that?
Yep. So there's multiple different ways. There's a manual float, which I think is the least reliable. That it's just a bobber, they call it, on a pipe, and the pipe sticks up, and you can mark the pipe at different gradations. So it's like, but the code requires it to have some way to notify you when it's at 75% capacity. Okay. A lot of cases, the people use an electronic one that is like alarm in your house, and so all of a sudden you have a light in your house. Now they have multiple different ones with the technology, and I think that if it was me, I'd probably like to know where I'm at, when I leave for a weekend, and not be surprised when I come up the next weekend. But they have them, like if you're familiar in an RV, you can press the button and it tells you, oh, you got 1 light, 2 light, 3 light, 4 light. It's like, okay, we're 50% full. They have them that can tell you, you can look, it'll tell you where you're at. There's all different technologies we can do. You can know exactly how many gallons capacity you have in there at all times. And of course it's electronic. So, I mean, there's possibility that it could be, something go wrong, but they have good technology, better technology than they used to, and it's more reliable. So, I mean, it is a good thing now.
Would does all the water go into this holding tank, or would say the softener drain elsewhere?
You certainly can drain the softener elsewhere. That doesn't have to. Anything that comes in contact with the human body or a washer machine is considered wastewater that needs to go in there. So a softener or furnace condensate is not supposed to go in there either. So a lot of times it does, but.
All right, I'll pass on.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Let's stand.
All right. Yeah, Bob pretty much covered everything on the history, some of the stuff I knew. As far as putting a holding tank there and the situation you're in with the steep embankments, I guess I'm more in favor of holding tanks than putting a sewer down between the house and the lake, personally. So I know it can be done, and we have them in the county, but as far as for lake quality, a couple of holding tanks that are properly installed and maintained, I think is better than putting a sewer 68 feet from the lake. So I'm okay with what's being proposed.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Hearing Dan there at the end, that it does make sense instead of putting that holding tank down there, but I kind of wondered, I'm gonna start at the top. Will there be a room for a future garage there?
You could at the end of that first turnaround right there.
Okay.
It's also the place where you're gonna pump from, so it's not ideal.
Yep.
Very, very much less than ideal.
I see your first plan was home and it was more stretched out there. And I was just wondering why you didn't stretch it out with the existing driveway, kind of use that area.
Well, that wasn't his. That was a previous owner.
Okay.
So
that makes a little more difference. Then I was gonna do that with the contract. And then for Aaron, what's the difference, Aaron, from cabin to home? How do you, because for a cabin, that's
You meet
reasonable.
single-family dwelling standards, you're a home from our perspective. You could call it 50 different things. I'm gonna call it a home. So that's how we have to look at it. I mean, people that use it for recreational use are probably gonna call it a cabin. But essentially, they're interchangeable from our perspective.
Okay.
Now, with that said, though, and maybe for the board's purview as well, I guess I didn't get a clear understanding what was gonna happen with the existing cabin that was out there.
Down by the lake.
Yep, I mean, it's gonna stay. It's on the plan to stay, unless you're,
It's on
Gonna
the plan
remove
to stay. I don't really have, I mean, it might be a boathouse or something silly like that.
okay, because that's something we would have to know at time of permit application, what it's gonna be. 'Cause you can't have two houses on the property, even though that doesn't probably meet today's standards for a house.
Yeah.
It was a cabin, so it'd be conversion to something.
And I think we had a little discussion about maybe it, could be a his water-orientated structure.
Anything between the house and the lake is, at this point,
Yeah.
based on setback, is gonna be classified as water oriented. Granted, if it's exceeding the standards for current water oriented, it's going down in use, you could call it, so it would be fine. We just have to know it's not gonna be a house when you apply for the permit, so, and you have to let us know what it's gonna be.
So my last question would be, on a holding tank, this is just mostly for my information, but is there a way that you could put a little, like a holding pond if that were to overflow without going into the lake? So that would be top side, you could see it, like where it would run, would be held then instead of going right to the lake. Because just for a quick story, my house never got hooked up to septic, and one day I looked out and the water was running down the hill. And they never turned it on. So I'm wondering if it did overfill, that there was some kind of a safety barrier there to prevent it from going into the lake.
Well, generally every system has the same thing, and, generally I don't see that, and I think that, if you were out here and you look at this flat area, it's from the water to the toe of this hill is pretty much 100 feet. So I don't really foresee how it would get there.
Pretty steep to that
It
flat
would,
point.
yeah, and then it would run straight to the bottom of that hill, and then it would, depending on the year. But I don't know. I think that with these elevations and all that, I think that would be I'm not sure how for sure we would do that,
Couldn't you put like a little pond down there that the water would siphon to that pond in that flat area?
Yep.
Then it would make you aware that, hey, we got sewer issues.
You would, but I think you'd be fighting the floodplain at that point.
Would you?
You'd be impacting the floodplain of that lake.
Well, also, I don't want, that to me kind of is like, I don't think it would be, but I say like, oh no, that's intended for it to overflow into, right? And one thing I know is when you take sewage and put it in water, all that stuff is basically water soluble, so it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Once it's in the water, a lot of nitrates and stuff. But it's, so if it goes over the land, it has a much better chance of, not polluting the lake or the groundwater if it's not discharged into other water. So I don't know that, I don't want to create a mosquito pond and, and that. So I don't know. I don't think that would happen. I think that in a lot of these cases, it has a tendency to back up into the house before it does that, the way they seal the covers and everything else that.
Because I know out of sight's out of mind. So if somebody don't see it and they just kind of unplug that little warning bell, and then over time, all of a sudden it's flooding out, you'll see it if it's sitting on there in that pond and get it remedied and fixed, before it gets to the lake. And that's what was my safety, but
Yeah.
I'm still okay with it. Other than that one, I like something just in case. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my concern was addressed, and I think the public had expressed a concern about, the water quality, and it sounds like the holding tank is the best option for that, and that's, I think, important to me, and I'm satisfied that that's would be the safest for the water, so I'm fine with it. With that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to allow a single-family dwelling that would be serviced by a holding tank Site plan noted as Exhibit A, building plans noted as Exhibit B, and the septic plan noted as Exhibit C.
There a second?
I'll make a second.
All right, any discussion?
Did you mention the stormwater plan?
No, I did not, because we really haven't talked about it, and the stormwater plan, I mean, we're not looking for any variances on the house or placement or setbacks or anything like that. I mean, why would the stormwater necessarily be required and do all those things if he wasn't asking for a variance of the tanks?
Okay.
He would be getting permits. I guess that was my view of it. If we want to do it and we want to discuss stormwater, then we can discuss it.
And then the second thing is, would we want to add a pumping plan as a condition?
That would change my no to a yes then.
We could. I'm not against that.
Okay, so we'll note
I
it.
guess I'll add as a condition D, you know, having a noted pumping plan on record.
Okay,
And I will second that as well.
all right.
So just for clarification purposes too, I know we would require it anyways when you submit the new house plan, you have something showing that existing cabin's converted. But just as a condition is kind of another way to solidify, basically, that you would have plans for that existing cabin to be converted to whatever kind of you're going for at the time of building permit application.
Do we need to add that?
It could be for discussion here, it could be added as a condition, it's up to you guys. I just want to make it very well known that we can't have two houses on the property. So before we'd accept that application for the new home, we would want to make sure that you have something that's approved by us saying that that existing cabin is converted. Or removed, yeah, it's up to you at that point.
And I'll so note that in our motion, that the existing cabin has to be dealt with and it cannot be a home.
That's second.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion. Any further discussion? None? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Oh, you got it.